Oleh Yanishevskiy was a police lieutenant colonel and colonel in the Kyiv Berkut. He had served in the Berkut since 2001. During the events of February 20th, 2014, he accommodated the retreat of the riot police. Prosecutors claim that among the security officers dressed in black, there was one person in blue camouflage, Oleh Yanishevskiy. He was arrested on June 26, 2016. Since then, he and 4 other Kyiv Berkut members have been detained in a detention unit. He is accused of killing 48 people and wounding 80 others. Yanishevskiy held the same position in the same unit until his detention. During the summer of 2014, he was in active service in Donbass. He was awarded the status of combat veteran. I would like to start by discussing your status of combat veteran. How were you awarded this? Where? When? Under what circumstances?
It happened when the escalation of military actions in eastern Ukraine began. The unit was offered the chance to take part and reward themselves for the Maidan events.
Who came to you with this proposal?
It came from the Minister of Internal Affairs, Arseniy Avakov. The commander of the unit was invited. Attending was our commander, leadership of the head office of Kyiv Police, Avakov, and his deputy.
What do you mean by reward?
It was made very clear that if we disagreed, we'd have problems. 2 people were detained in April. In order to avoid further prosecution, the unit went to take part in the anti-terrorist operation.
So you've talked about going to the front line with the Maidan 100. So were you on the same side as them? How can you explain that? You say that the protesters were aggressive to you on Maidan. They were throwing Molotov cocktails at you. But then you also claim that you were protecting the motherland alongside them. I don't know how you view your actions there, but they were definitely protecting the motherland.
We found a common language with them. They understood that Maidan was over. We understood that the country was split. The issue of eastern Ukraine, the loss of Crimea, military actions. We had to fight. We were told of the events, but didn't think it was going to grow into such a serious conflict. Unfortunately, even that changed very quickly.
You were working in that unit during the Orange Revolution. You have 2 images of Maidan in your memory. The difference is that the special forces weren't engaged before, and in 2014 it was a completely different picture.
During the time of the Orange Revolution, a person in the military could freely move amongst the protesters. At that time, people that were on Maidan weren't so radicalised, and maybe not a lot of people took part in it, but they didn't ignore the police. Why didn't anyone make the decision to disperse the people of Maidan? That's not for me to say, but you have to understand that no administrative building were taken then. There was no blockade of military units.
Okay, you returned from the anti-terrorist zone and were promised some kind of reward, but then you were announced as a suspect.
This all happened in 1 year. I was invited to the Prosecutor General's office on 26th of June 2015, and that was a Friday. Agents from the Security Service of Ukraine came and introduced themselves and said, "We would like to talk to you." That's how I was detained. I wasn't hiding after Maidan.
Did you expect it?
Yes.
Did you have a grudge against anyone? Avakov, maybe?
I have a feeling of injustice. They looked, made some notes, and decided who was guilty and who wasn't.
When was the first time you went to Maidan? You were there? What were you doing there?
For us, everything began from that famous tractor on the 1st of December. when the assault on the military happened.
Хлопців просто давили вживу.
Ви були там вже.
Ми вже приїхали,
We arrived in the evening.
І що ви робили?
і все це ми вже бачили. Стояли.
We were guarding the presidential office. The task of all the units was to guard or protect the presidential administration from attacks from the protesters. The internal forces were standing on the first row. So now you understand who was the first to be attacked. The peaceful protesters started with bottles, chains, and that tractor.
Ну, ви розумієте, від що ми потрапили.
But before that, there was the events of November the 30th. But going back to the 1st of December, the way you understood it, people were trying to break into the presidential administration building, and your task was to prevent this. Am I right? Was that the order?
Як виглядав наказ?
Наказ виглядає забезпечити.
The order was to protect and keep public order. Our unit wasn't there. They also have a line. I understand that they had to guard all the state buildings. But what if your life is under threat? They reacted as they reacted.
Do you remember, were many of the protesters wounded?
Yes. Right.
And your unit had nothing to do with that? Did you see what was happening there? How people were being arrested?
Як затримували, не бачу.
I hadn't seen how they were arrested. All the events were on the edge.
And what about the video taken that evening, where the people lying on the floor are being beaten?
I wasn't there.
Did you understand what the protest was about? Why those people were throwing Molotov cocktails?
Звичайні люди.
Common people, maybe, who really wanted to change something. But it had been used by politicians who came to power as revanchists. We came to that point because of the radical forces.
Ніхто не кричав одразу
At the beginning, nobody was calling for an overthrow of the regime. People were not radical at first. But there were several events in the run-up to that which led to this.
Це обговорювалось, але ж
Been there, we discussed that. But then why didn't people act through the executive power entities? Why didn't they do everything legally, through elections?
в даній ситуації.
В якій інституції можна було
Which institution was protecting the people's rights back then, during Maidan?
на той момент під час Майдану? Де?
I can tell you one thing, it is the same now.
Ситуацію ми маємо зараз.
Ви погоджуєтесь з
Do you
тим, що
agree
тоді
that at
був
the time of the Maidan
перекос,
revolution,
що дійсно
the protection of
людина була
people's
обмежена
rights was
захистом
limited?
прав? Я правильно вас розумію? Якщо ви зараз скажете, що ви...
It's still limited now. It's always like that.
Так
Ну,
чекайте, але в
давайте
людини є
розглядати-
право вийти на протест. От ваших
But one has the right to protest, like the way your relatives or friends could say that you're being detained here illegally.
є це право.
Є право.
І ви виходите,
Believe me,
будете
my
говорити.
friends were also on Maidan.
І мої друзі були на Майдані.
Ось ці.
Але
But we
порозуміння.
were looking for common ground.
Питання. 20 лютого на Інститутській. З ким
On the 20th of February, who were the Berkut dealing with when they were securing the governmental quarter? With radical forces or with demonstrators?
Я скажу так, що
If you want to understand, we should start with February the 18th. A peaceful march was announced. We received operational information that it was coming with arms. So we were ordered not to let them go to the Verkhovna Rada. The anti-Maidan was also taking place nearby.
також йшли з метою, щоб два
Did you receive information that the anti-Maidan protesters also had weapons?
Yes, people from that side were also detained for illegal possession of arms.
справи за незаконне володіння зброєю. Все почалося, що от депутати пройшли,
It started with the demand to let people in. Because we had let MPs.
спочатку
At first, crowds started to build, then Molotov cocktails and rocks. After that, we had our first fatalities.
і коли пішли перші поранені і вбиті,
The breaking point was when we received information about the riot police being attacked with weapons.
біля нас падали і працівники.
People from the internal military forces fell near us because of gunshot
Але ж,
wounds.
з'являються вбиті із того боку.
At that time, protesters were also being killed. We talked to one commander. He told us the riot police were provided with weapons, bullet slugs in particular.
Якщо спецзасоби і отримувалися, то
All I can say is it was taken pretty serious in our unit. People who had those riot control weapons were under strict control of command.
вони були дуже під, ну так сказати, під сильним контролем командування полку.
Talking about these weapons, you mean the semi-automatic Fort pistol.
Yeah.
У вас
Did
було
your people have these as well?
Yeah,
18 точно.
On February the 18th?
Скільки це було?
I suppose 10 people had them.
Did they use Fort pistols?
Не знаю.
Як?
I don't know. I wasn't
Я
behind
не був
them.
поряд з ним.
How did the morning of the 20th of February start for you?
With riot police officers being killed, as you know, armistice was announced on February the 19th. A line of riot police was standing there, not moving towards the scene.
Стояв рубіж правоохоронців.
Some were trying to prove that a raid was planned, but all I can say is we had no such information.
Планувався штурм Майдану. Я можу сказати, що не було такої інформації. Мабуть,
And then you heard gunshots? From where?
Звідки?
Conservatoire.
А ви не бачили?
Did you see the riot police throwing Molotov cocktails at it?
Поліції кидали в консерваторію.
I saw, as well as the protesters.
Чому ви, ну, це ж перевищення службових.
It's official misconduct. You didn't do anything.
межа
The fine line was crossed on February the 18th.
Андрій, який
The commander of the Dnipropetrovsky Berkut called General Headquarters, but nobody could give an answer of what to do. Did
А
you
ви
call?
намагались зв'язатися з Лавком? І так само нічого?
я не зв'язувався. Я одразу
I made a decision immediately and ordered my people to leave the governmental quarters.
So you made the decision to withdraw your people. What were you wearing?
звичайний
Common camouflage with militia sign. The blue one.
блакитний плямистий.
Were you bearing arms?
No.
Ну, а ви як, от дивлячись відео, ви кажете,
When watching the videos from Maidan, it seems as though people were being shot by the dozen. How did you see that?
It looked like an armed civil conflict.
Яким чином?
з двох сторін.
From both sides?
It's the only way I can evaluate the situation.
Правильно розумію, що
If I understand correctly, you think that the riot police were acting as though there was a war on Maidan. When somebody shot at them, did they shoot back?
Ну, я ж приклад навів, я не сказав, що цю ситуацію...
I'm just saying that the anti-terrorist operation can be an example. I don't say Maidan and ATO are the same. We're talking about a situation that was assessed by the riot police.
Is there anything you regret? If you could turn the clock back, would you act differently?
Не знаю.
I don't know.
Ну, ви тут сидите довго, я думаю, ви ставили собі це питання багато разів.
Можу сказати,
I can only say that if I could choose another profession,
часу назад,
I would still choose
якщо
mine.
був би вибір обирати якусь іншу професію, все одно вибрав би
Berkut?
службу.
Yeah, serving in the Berkut.
Дякую.